West Orange, New Jersey. Nice, huh?
Yeah, just tell us all about The Oranges. What's it all about?
It's Orange's character comedy, set around Christmas time. A suburban setting of West Orange, New Jersey, hence the titles. The Oranges is a geographic place. It's about two families who live across the road from each other, and more than that, have been best friends for the last 25 years and live in, it's like two families living as one. And the catalyst for the story is the return of the prodigal daughter, Nina, Leighton Meester's character, who comes back after a 5-year absence and starts a relationship with the father of the other family. So it's about the chaos that ensues. It's about all the balls going in the air, and hopefully it's about not knowing exactly how they'll fall out.
And it's your first big sort of feature film. Is cinema something you've always wanted to get into?
I made a movie in the UK. It's the first film I did in the States. And, I went there by accident and found myself, I went to do the first 2 episodes of Entourage and got invited to stay on, and so I was there making that show, and because that show was much loved in Hollywood, I was, getting opportunities from movie world, and I love, cinema forever. That was my passion from early on. So I always, trying to make films, but trying to make something good. I just go with what material that I like. Most of the stuff that I read in America, not particularly for me, and sometimes it might be good, but just not for me. You can only really ever follow your own sensibility. But when this one came along, and I loved the script, and so I fought quite hard to get the job, and then I had independent movie in America, you have to fight quite hard to get it made. It's a grind, but so you've got to be happy enough with the material to want to, devote that degree of pain.
So having directed film and TV, just how different are they as two sort of separate mediums?
Different and similar. I mean, for me, the principles are the same. It's storytelling. What's it about? What's the mood? What kind of tone are you trying to strike? What world are you trying to create in which the material can best take place? Those things are, for me, are uniform across any of the media. Film, I think you have, a kind of spotlight. You have less time to develop characters. You have less. You got to have a self-contained story. Most of all, you got nowhere to hide. I've done episodes of Entourage that are better than other episodes, and sometimes you can duck a bit and dive. But film, you're out there in your spotlight. You're looking to get people, to pay money to see it. That's a big ask. So I think the kind of demands on polishing a really great film, that's a pressure that is not quite so acute in television.
And The Oranges does deal with quite sort of upsetting themes in a sense. It's the breaking up of sort of two families and friendships. But it's all done in a very light-hearted, quite jovial way. Was it quite difficult to express such themes in a comedic way?
I think that, it's a smart question, because I think that's absolutely the heart of the movie is like, yes, it's a complicated and troublesome, and Americans called it dark premise, which I never saw as dark, but that balance between comedy and pathos, it means that you've got a little bit of a tightrope. You couldn't make the comedy so broad that it makes mockery of the characters, and Leighton Meester's character comes back, it's just in some degree a bit of a troublemaker or a sort of live wire, but you at the same point you need to find her likeable to some degree. You don't want to sit in judgment. The trick of the movie was that it's about not judging people and this, that, and the other. And I think that is the delicate thing. It's not a very American concept in a funny way. It's not black and white. It's much more about the grey area of life. And for me, I just saw it as, okay, it's about people struggle when they're facing a crisis that they weren't expecting. How do they cope with that? And the fact that they can come through and prevail or prosper even, was the sort of feel-good element. You just try and handle the character development and then, keep the comedy intact. It seemed to me a funny script, so... but life is funny. In the hardest situations in life, we fall back on laughter. So,
and one of my favourite aspects of the film, as you sort of mentioned, is that you do like David and you do like Nina, which in many films they're sort of portrayed as the sort of the villains almost.
Right.
And was it the intention for this to be a very likeable cast full of characters, or was I just in a really good mood?
No, you're right on both counts. One, I wanted all the cast to be likeable, and when we talked, with the casting director about it, I wanted actors that felt could, emanate a likability on screen. Secondly, in terms of the relationship that was, that is at the centre of the movie, the older man, younger woman. The entire trick of the movie was that despite what you expect them to fall into that role of villainy and the antagonists, I remember from the very first time reading the script, you're like, hold on a minute, I'm not, this isn't exactly how I felt. I'm kind of into them. It has something, that takes you in despite yourself. That was how the movie played. So, that's what I had to try and create with Hugh and Leighton, a chemistry that you would think was authentic and it was sincerely felt and emotionally true, even if it was problematic for the rest of the world. And I'm pleased if you didn't sit in judgment on the way that you might have expected, because that was the entire way that the story was being told. And
talking of the character of David, I mean, you must have been thrilled to get Hugh Laurie on board, but was it quite a difficult sort of role to cast, because you need someone that is believable, that a younger girl would fall for, and he has got that kind of charm about him.
You should have made this movie. You got all the right ideas about it. Yeah, absolutely. The casting of David was the most delicate one in the whole thing for me, because yes, he had to be attractive enough to make it believable, but most importantly, he had to be not somebody that was in a typical midlife crisis of a middle-aged man that was sexually motivated or reasserting his sexuality or his youth or anything. If that character felt predatory or sort of grubby in his motivation, I think the film would have died halfway through. There'd be no story. Hugh, for me, had the decency that I think could carry an audience in that way, that you weren't going to sort of just hate him through the movie. You were more inclined to sort of try and work out what he was going through. Hugh was my first choice, and I hung on to him stubbornly, despite anyone else ever saying anything to the contrary.
And tell us about the character of Vanessa, obviously played by Leah Shawkat. I mean, because we almost see everything unravel sort of through her eyes, don't we?
I thought the script was unusual. It had a narrator that wasn't central to the action, if you like. She's an observer of a story that takes place under her nose, and she has a kind of rather, sarcastic or sort of slightly snarky edge to her. But as the story unravelled, it was like, okay, the beauty of this concept of not the first person narrator, if you like, was that it had something at the end you could discover that, okay, the story actually was more important to her than she would have had you believe. And then I just thought that was an interesting way to come at things.
And the film does sort of avoid any melodrama, I felt. And do you think that the fact that you've got sort of a past in documentary making helped in that regard?
I think probably, yes. I think I tend towards the real more than I tend towards the kind of glamorous or heightened. So I think there was the journey of making it was like, I was always like, it's got to be funny, got to be funny, got to be funny. Was that it perhaps became more emotionally felt than I had expected. I thought it might be a little more madcap. And then as I was watching the actors, I'm like, wow, this actually, yes, this is a grave situation, and they're having to play that level of emotional sincerity. So it maybe, became a little less knockabout than it might have done.
Of course, this movie is effectively it's sort of a Christmas movie. What do you think that kind of angle brings to the Oranges?
I think Christmas is great because, the spotlight is on family and family relationships, and this is like an acute moment in these people's lives where the family relationships are coming under scrutiny anyway. So Christmas only sort of heightens that, and the fact that one character is a little, Catherine Keener's character, is a little obsessed with Christmas, again raises the stakes. How this Christmas going to function? How the family going to function this Christmas? And then I like it because I think go and see a comedy about Christmas at Christmas is a good sell. I like holiday movies. I don't know, they tend to be a bit something else, and I thought this one, though, it could be a bit different as a holiday movie.
And just finally, of course, this is a big sort of US production, but as an Englishman yourself, are you sort of more, not concerned, but you more sort of nervous almost about what the British audiences are going to make of it?
No, I just want everybody to like the movie. I always thought it was a movie for audiences, not critics, really. It was like it was warm and it was funny, and I thought people could like it. I hope it does well here. Funny enough, I thought it might be easier for it to do well with a British audience or a European audience more than I thought. Americans might judge it more and not like the idea of the movie is tricky for American audience, and well, I say audience, I mean critics more. I've seen it with American audience who loved it, and have laughed a lot. But no, you can't. You just make a film for everyone. You make it as truthfully as you can and hope that they enjoy it. And with this one, I've seen enough to know people laugh a lot. No, that's not a bad, exchange for your money. It's got something going for it.
Merry Christmas!
It's about to be.
Hey! The globe!
Ugh.